Hey everybody, it's Elizabeth and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you guys what can you plant in Zone 7 in September. So we're finally in September now. I hope you guys are having a great start to the month. For me, in Northeast Arkansas, September is lovely. Sometimes it's really hot and other times it's like this morning it's gorgeous at 70 degrees. So what can you plant in Zone 7? Also I want to mention that in these videos I go over things you should be doing, planting, and just taking care of in general for the month in your garden in Zone 7. So it also has to do with the weather. Again, September is a frost-free month for everyone in Zone 7. And I also have a playlist of videos in this whole for every month of the year. So that will be linked in a card and linked in the description below if you come across this later and you want to know what to plant in June. And you can just save the playlist to your watch later list on YouTube and come back to it later and hopefully look at every month. So first let's talk about what you can be planting this month. There's not a ton, summer has passed, and a lot of plants that we grow to eat love that summer heat. Our nights are getting cooler and not all plants will tolerate that. So what you can still be planting are lettuce, Swiss chard, spinach, and radishes. You can also be planting turnips still. So keep in mind, although pests love the summer heat and that's when they get really bad in the garden, they also tend to have a resurgence in fall. And so keep that in mind. You still want to stay on top of your regular weekly preventative insect treatment, whatever you've been doing. If you've not been doing any sort of treatment like that, then I don't know what you're doing, because I have to. Even trying to do 90% organic, you know, we have to spray things with an organic insecticide weekly all throughout the summer. So just keep doing that until you're done gardening. You may think that it's not as necessary in the fall. You will see less pests, but there are still some that can do a lot of damage to your crops. Now is also a good time to go ahead and bring your houseplants in. So a lot of people put their houseplants outside during the summer. I've got a huge monstera over there on the deck and I set her out every summer. The general rule is bring them in before frost, but it's best to go ahead and bring them in September and give them a few weeks inside the house to adjust before even your home is cooler, because even in the winter your home is going to be cooler. And I don't know about you guys where you are in Zone 7, but for us in Zone 7 in the cooler months we're very dry most of the time. Not every month, but a lot drier than we are in the summer, so humidity is lower. So your plant's going to have to adjust from a lot of humidity outside like we have in the summer to decreased humidity inside. So they're just going to need a few weeks. Now before you bring your houseplants in, I recommend taking a water hose or something and spraying off the leaves or wiping them down to make sure you don't accidentally bring inside any outside bugs. Now if you plan on adding any mulch to flower beds, mostly landscape beds, then now would be the time to start prepping that. You can always buy individual bags, but it's so much more cost effective to just get a load of mulch. I say that, I don't practice what I preach, because I tend to just get 10 to 12 at a time, whatever will fit in my truck, so that I can make the project seem less insane. But it really would be wise, and I may do it this year, to just get a load of mulch delivered to my house. So most landscape beds, if you have them mulched, they're going to need a refresh before winter. That would be the best time to give them a refresh while the weather is nice and get everything covered. If you don't mulch your landscape beds and the leaves have started falling, you can I will go through and I will rake my leaves into my flower beds, and that's on top of the mulch that's already there, because that's just creating an extra layer of protection for the soil and also for your perennials that are sleeping in the wintertime. Now in September, most perennials are not sleeping yet, but anything you can do to kind of prep to get ahead of it, you know, go ahead and do it is what's recommended. I like to do things like this in October because by October I have some perennials already starting to sleep, which brings me to my next point. So this time of year, if you've got perennials in the landscape, then the ones that you can divide, now's the time to do it. So that would be things like monkey grass, fountain grasses that are perennials, lilies, cannas, hostas. I can't think of any other off the top of my head. But if they like bulk up and they grow by root and they expand. Also, if you have one and you're not sure, you can Google, like, can you divide hostas? You can just Google it and check and see. Because right now they're in their prime. Like, I have hostas that are like 4 feet around. This would be the perfect time. You dig it up, or you can honestly take a shovel and just literally slam it in the middle of the plant. A lot of people are like, oh my God, but they'll be just fine. But anyways, just slam it in the middle of the plant and dig up half of it. And then backfill. Of course, the plant's going to look kind of weird because it's round, obviously, but it'll be fine. But doing it now in September is great because you give the plant you cut up, as well as the new plant, time to adjust. The one you took the division off of is going to rebound much faster because it's in its home. But the one that you're taking and you're moving somewhere else is going to be in some shock. And it needs to put in new roots in that new place. So doing it in September, you give them anywhere from, 6 to 10 weeks without frost to adapt to their new place. And it'll be great for them. They may not look gorgeous the rest of the year, but most of us gardeners know that. But even if they don't look gorgeous, they're going to be in their new home, and come next spring, they'll both come up like individual plants and have that nice round shape to them, and they'll just look so much better. And it's a great way to get free plants, so definitely do that in September. The one that you're dividing off, go ahead and cut it back. So like, say if you took a hosta, let's see, its plants the plant itself, I mean, it could be, the point is, okay, I'm trying to think of how to say this the easiest for someone who might not understand, but you're going to have that root system. It's like half of a root system, and you've got this greenery. You want to eliminate a lot of that greenery because the plant, now a new plant, this root has to provide for everything that you took off. And it was used to tag teaming it with the other plant that you cut it off of. So not only does it have a job of putting down roots and not dying, it's also got to take care of all this crap that you left on it. So if you cut back the greenery, if you've got like a tall perennial, if you cut it back to 6 to 8 inches above the ground, for a hosta, I would cut off like all of the leaves, but a few, and do that. Then it doesn't take as much energy over here for the greenery, and it can focus on getting in a really good root system, which is what you want it to do in that limited time it has before spring. So if you've got them in the ground, if you grew them this year, now is the time to harvest your pumpkins, gourds, and things like that before the first frost. Any of those vine fall crops, you don't want them to experience frost out in the field. So you want to go ahead and get them put up somewhere so they can start to dry out. In regard to things that you can plant, we also still have a small window to plant broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower. And you're going to see me do that in one of my next videos. If you were going and buying starts from the store, you're going to have a lot better luck because they're going to be 6 to 8 weeks older. I'm going to start them by seeds, and I'm just going to take a chance. So if you still want to get those crops in, they love the cooler nights. They cannot handle our hot nights in the summertime. But I also want to mention, if you're growing any of those 3 crops, broccoli, cabbage, or cauliflower, the pests love them. It doesn't matter what time of year it is, pests love them. So you want to cover them with insect netting. Whether you have like a little hoop house or you do row covers. Row covers, I'll try to put a picture in here in case you've just never heard of them before. But they're hoops that you stick into the ground around your crop, and then you just put the insect netting over it. The insect netting is very cheap, very affordable to buy a big piece. I recommend buying a big piece and then don't cut it up. I made that mistake before where I cut one to size to fit like a 6-foot section I was doing, and then years later I realized I should have just kept it big. If you keep it big, then you just drape it over your hoops And then you need something like rocks, bricks, sticks, stones, whatever you can find that's heavy enough. And you want to place it at all four corners and then along the edge so that the wind doesn't pull the insect netting off. If you have cats like I do, beware, because they are going to play with that insect netting. So that's not fun. So definitely do that if you're trying to grow those crops this year. Now is also when our summer crops are finishing. And for a lot of us, that's sad. I know a good amount of people around here in Arkansas who actually tear out their summer gardens early August, end of July, because everyone's going back to school. And they're like, summer's over, garden's over. Y'all, we've been still, it's September now. We've still been getting plenty out of our garden in the month of August. But some people do that, I don't know, means of tradition, or they're too busy with back to school. Thankfully, that's not our lifestyle anymore. We don't have any young kids at home during the week, and we haven't had anyone at home during the week in school in years. But we like to let the garden go until it naturally can't go anymore. Because we still have, at least here in Arkansas in Zone 7, we still have some shockingly warm days. We have fall, we have a warm fall and a cool fall, and it kind of goes back and forth throughout the season. So we'll see a lot of our deciduous trees start to drop leaves, but like tomatoes are still producing. So we just keep them in until they literally can't anymore. A lot of our tomatoes in the in-ground garden will likely come out in the next couple of weeks, but again, we're just watching them and letting them do their thing. And another thing too, before you let your tomatoes go, is leave them out there longer and get you some green tomatoes. If you don't eat green tomatoes, you can give them away to someone. But that's what we always do. We always pick off the last of the green tomatoes to give to people, especially my mom, because she likes to make chow chow with them, which is kind of like a version of a salsa or a relish that you make with primarily green tomatoes, but also some other things. But so for a lot of these fall crops that are these summer crops that are on their way out, just leave them. They say don't fertilize anything anymore, because if the plants are stressed at all from like the cooler nights, because they love the warm nights, then they're kind of just doing their best to hold on and still produce. So fertilizing them can actually shock them. So the rule of thumb is September until they die, don't fertilize vegetable crops. I will still fertilize my landscape plants 1 or 2 more times, because I like to give them that boost before they go to rest. Help them have a really strong root system, whatever it is they may need. If you've already gone through and pulled plants, because that could be you. If you've gone through and you pulled plants, now's a great time to go back and add, kind of amend the soil in those beds, whether you're going to add fertilizer or organic compounds, like, you know, man-made organic things. Again, like I said before, if you have leaves falling, it's a good time to go ahead and just push them on your flower beds. That was my cat. He scared himself. If you do mulch like I do, some people don't like doing the leaves on top of the mulch. It ends up being a really big cleanup job for me in the spring, but I feel like it's the best natural thing for the plants, and so in the soil, because the soil needs to be covered. It is desired to be covered, and so even though I do have mulch there, the mulch has been in that bed. There's no telling how long it's been there. It breaks down over time. The leaves are there as a free resource, a good source of carbon. As they set on the surface throughout the winter, the rain, the snow, and all that breaks down the leaves and leaks nutrients into the soil. So it's only good things for the soil. But some people just find it a nuisance to have to rake all that off in the spring. What I recommend for that is a really thin rake. I have one that is great. It has really small like teeth on it. It's metal, and I can expand it. So the teeth can either be like kind of closer together like this, or I can spread it out like that. That is so wonderful for getting between plants and just lightly taking off the surface while I'm not bringing my mulch with me. So that definitely makes the job a lot easier. It was harder before I had that rake. I used a regular, like a leaf rake that's plastic and like 2 feet wide. And that made it harder not only to get between plants, but it would often drag my mulch out with it, which is a pain in the butt. If you plan to plant a cover crop, now is the time. So if you have any perennials that are already starting to go dormant in your area, some people say you can go ahead and put a plant marker there so that you remember what is going to be there next spring. But I'll tell you what I do. So nature, okay, here's a great example. My wormwood over here is a perennial herb. She's right there. She's huge. She starts to die back the end of summer from the heat. You see how crazy she looks? Right here. This is my wormwood. It's a medicinal herb. Good for detoxes and cleanses. But anyways, don't mind all this junk in here. This is weeds growing up under the wisteria. The wisteria is divine. But she's dying back. So some people would say, go ahead and cut that dead part off. Or you could even cut it all the way down to the ground, depending on what type of perennial it is. But that's why I said I'm going to tell you what I do, because that's not what I do. Okay, so nature, birds, insects, all those things, they love those dead plants. That plant, I have not trimmed it back in 4 or 5 years. She's unruly. I really need to give her a haircut just to kind of revive her so she's looking better next year. But in general, I cut my perennials back in the spring. I don't cut them back in the fall. I leave them. Oh, we got cats over here by the swing. I leave all my perennials, and even my annuals that have died back, I leave them until the spring because, you know, some insects live in them. Birds will eat the old seeds off of the plant tops. And yeah, I'll just leave anything. There's a few things that I won't leave. And that's anything that's a vine. A vine is a lot easier to pull off of a trellis while it's still kind of alive. When it's dead and the stem is hard and it's wrapped around a cattle panel or an arch, it is so much harder to get off. So when my morning glory over here, when she starts to die back or around our first frost, I'll just yank her out completely. Same thing for cucumbers, but I've already pulled them out. But other things, almost everything else in general. Zinnias are only annuals. I leave the stalks, the dead stalks in the yard. Some people might find that depressing, but I find it more depressing to have my landscape half empty because I have a lot of perennials. But like everything dies in the winter except for evergreens. And it has been a goal of mine for a long time to fill up my landscape space with evergreens. It takes time. It's a project. Until then, I don't like having everything missing. So I will just leave everything until about a week or two before I think we're going to have some nice spring weather. So usually when the daffodils pop up in nature, and we have a few on our property too, when those pop up, I cut back stuff in the spring. Last thing I want to mention is if you are growing sweet potatoes or peanuts, now is the time to pull them before it gets cold and store them while it's still warm enough inside. So, and if you're growing if you're growing peanuts, let me know. Comment below, because I've never grown peanuts. I tried once in Arizona, but not a habitable environment for them. But anyways, let me know if you have any other garden tips for this community here. Just leave them down below in the comments. We would love to hear everyone's opinions and tips and hot takes on gardening in September, because everyone here watching this loves to garden. But anyways, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this and this was helpful and that you have a wonderful day. And subscribe.